There we
Thank
go.
you. We're now live.
Thank you and welcome. So we have quorum, and we are been asked that when we actually sort of count heads here, do attendance, that everyone turn their camera on for just, even if just for a moment. And if we could do that. And if you just do that for a moment, and we'll ensure that everyone is here. So we've also been asked to remind people, it's kind of like preaching to the choir because we're the ones here, how important attendance is for these meetings. It's very difficult in summer, I realize. On some boards, they're just suspended for the summer. So first thing, land acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. So on item 2, the minutes, are there any errors or omissions in the minutes as circulated? No one's raised any? None so being, could I have a motion to approve the minutes from the July meeting, please?
This is Patrick. I'll you have to make the motion.
Thank you, Patrick.
I'll second.
And just thank you, Councillor. Okay. And I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? None so being, it's passed. Are there any, we're looking at the approval for the order of business. Are there any, Dorothy, deletions or additions?
No additions or deletions from the clerk's office.
Okay, nothing through there. Well, can I have a motion then to accept the order of business?
I'll move that, Lois.
Thank you, Lois.
I'll second that.
Thank you,
Or Pam will,
Councillor.
Pam will, I saw her hand up.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I wasn't able to get in. So it's great to be here. Sorry, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
that's okay.
I was waiting in the wings.
I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Business arising out of the minutes. There's nothing under that category. Are there any conflict of interest, declaration of conflict of interest for this meeting? None so being, we can move forward. There is no consideration of deferred business. Correspondence. Do we have correspondence, Dorothy?
Yes, correspondence was received for agenda item 9.2.1, which was circulated to the committee members.
Yes, thank you. Okay. And what about petitions?
No petitions have been received in the clerk's
Okay.
office.
7.3 presentations.
No presentations either, Chair,
Okay.
from the clerk's office.
And we have no information brought forward. We're moving along here. Reports. First report is for 9.1.1 case H00563, request to include 6484-6484 and 1/2 Jubilee Road in Halifax in the Registry of Heritage Property for the Halifax Regional Municipality. And staff member Carter Beaupre McPhee will be addressing this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hopefully you can all see my screen and hear me well.
Yep, we're good.
Great. Good afternoon to the Chair and members of the Heritage Advisory Committee. Staff are pleased to bring before the committee case H00563, the Heritage Registration Application for 6484 to 6484.5 Jubilee Road in Halifax. In December of 2022, an application was made by the owner to consider the inclusion of 6484 to 6484.5 Jubilee Road in the Registry of Heritage Property for the Halifax Regional Municipality. This property will be hereafter referred to as simply 6484 Jubilee Road, or historically as 250 Jubilee Road. 6484 Jubilee is located in the Old West End neighborhood on the southern side of Jubilee Road at the southwest corner of the intersection of Beach Street and Jubilee Road. The Heritage Advisory Committee is asked to score the subject property on the registration evaluation criteria before you. The first evaluation criterion is age. Construction of the subject dwelling was completed in 1921. Harry Isaac Mathers I purchased 2 adjacent lots at the southwest corner of Jubilee Road and Beach Street from John M. Geldert in 1919 and 1920, respectively. He then commissioned the design and construction of the subject dwelling, with construction likely starting in May of 1920, as that is when the historic building permit was issued. Mathers's diaries indicate that he moved from 39 Chestnut Street to the newly built 250 Jubilee Road on February 24th, 1921, and this is also supported by city directories. Based on the construction date of 1921, staff recommend a score of 5 points for age.
Five sounds reasonable.
Affirmative.
I would agree with that.
I agree as well.
So we're agreed on 5. Anyone opposed? And we'll move forward from there.
Thank you. The second evaluation criterion is historical importance for historical relationships. 6484 Jubilee Road is closely associated with the shipping logistics firm I.H. Mathers Limited and with the Mathers family. Isaac Henry Mathers was born in Newry, Northern Ireland, where he apprenticed under his father, Francis Mathers, who was a merchant in timber, iron, slate, and general goods. After his apprenticeship, Isaac emigrated to New York in 1870 and then to St. John, New Brunswick in 1871. He was at the time working for the Liverpool-based Carvel line of packet ships and opened offices for them in both locations. In 1872, he and his wife Kathleen relocated again, this time to Halifax, where Isaac established his own shipping agents, known as I.H. Mathers Limited. This company is still in operation today, some 151 years later, as a full-service shipping logistics firm and is still run by the Mathers family. The son of the company's founder, Harry Isaac Mathers I, joined his father's firm in 1890, and by 1906, Harry had taken over as company president. Harry expanded operations to include the export of lumber, pulp, salt, and canned lobster, as well as importing products like molasses from the Caribbean. Harry also vertically integrated the company by acquiring and operating mills and factories across Nova Scotia, which produced the products his shipping company exported. Harry held several consular titles, including Russian consul from 1899 until the Russian Revolution, during which he assisted Russian refugees arriving in Halifax. He also held the title of Danish consul and Norwegian consul, and would later receive knighthoods from both countries. Harry's company served as agents for ships gathered in Halifax preparing to cross the Atlantic during both the First and Second World Wars. In the interwar period in 1920, Harry commissioned the construction of the subject dwelling at an estimated cost of $25,000, or $338,362 adjusted for inflation. His home was known at the time as 250 Jubilee Road, or as he called it, the Red Gables. It was renumbered to 6484 Jubilee Road in the 1960s. Harry Isaac Mathers I's death in 1945 was marked with a large funeral held at 250 Jubilee Road. He received substantial recognition in the press, as well as tributes from then Mayor J.E. Lloyd, Harry G. DeWolf, and a great many trade organizations. His son, Harry Isaac Mathers II, who was raised at 250 Jubilee Road, took over the role of company president after his father's death. The then 30-year-old was colloquially known as the boy shipping boss. Following the end of World War II, he acquired 84 freighter vessels from the Canadian government, forming the largest freight fleet in Canada, and he engaged in new ventures in shipbuilding, stevedoring, and marine insurance. Harry Isaac Mathers II died in 1980, and the role of president passed to his son, Harry Isaac Mathers III. The company continues to be headed by the Mathers family to the present day. Per the staff report, staff recommend a score between 11 and 15 points for historical importance. However, since the writing of the staff report, some additional archival materials have been located, which provide a greater sense of the historical importance of the Mathers family and their shipping firm. I've done my best to provide a sense of that significance in this presentation. Harry Isaac Mathers I and II, as well as the firm generally, could reasonably be argued to hold national significance, and this house is intimately related to both of them. So if the Heritage Advisory Committee wishes to disagree with the scoring range presented in the staff report, I believe there would be sufficient justification.
Well, I would score at least a 15 anyway in
Yeah.
regards to provincially relevant. But that 15 would give a moderate rating nationally. So I think a 15 score would probably be very reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with a 15. You don't have to sell me on the Mathers family importance.
I agree with 15 as well.
Yeah. It's
As
excellent
do
number.
I.
So we're agreed on 15.
15.
15.
That's great.
Thank you. The third evaluation criterion is for significance of architect or builder. The architect responsible for the design of the subject dwelling is Allison Graham Crichton. Crichton has worked in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Nova Scotia, and Connecticut. In 1916, he was elected president of the Association of Architects in Saskatchewan. In 1920, he designed the subject dwelling for Harry Isaac Mathers I. And at this time, Crichton resided in and made significant repairs to the Evergreen Estate, which is now the Dartmouth Heritage Museum. Some of his most significant known works include the Park School in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, Knights of Columbus Hall in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, Sacred Heart Roman Catholic Church in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, and Lyman Memorial High School in Lebanon, Connecticut, among others. The builder of the subject dwelling, according to the historical building permit, is St. Clair Alexander Hiltz. Hiltz was a fisherman from Chester, Nova Scotia, who moved to Halifax to become a carpenter and later a contractor. He purchased multiple lots on Macaulay Street and built a home and workshop there. He and his family lived at 13 Macaulay Street, which still stands today as 5731 to 33 Macaulay Street. As is often the case with local contractors from this time period, there is little historical record of the homes he built. Owing primarily to architect Allison Graham Crichton's national and international significance, staff recommend a score between 7 and 10 points.
Yeah, I read in the notes, the architect was really interesting. And he's worked nationally. I would tend to go on the high range for that.
What's the relation of Allison Creighton with Helen Creighton?
Was she, the Evergreen House, the museum, was where she lived at one point in time?
And he did too, so I don't know if it's husband, wife, or brother, sister.
No, I don't think it was husband and wife, no.
I'm just
I
trying to figure-
believe it was cousin.
Cousins, okay.
I looked at
That
that.
makes
when I was
sense.
reading, and I think it was probably he was her uncle or they were cousins, something like
Mhm.
that.
Okay.
One step removed.
There used to be a Graham Creighton High School in Dartmouth. Is that any relation to this architect?
No, it's probably the son of Allison Creighton, but I went to Grand Creighton High School. That was my next question. But no, Grand Creighton himself, he was the superintendent for the school board way back in the mid-century, I guess you could say.
Mhm. Well, was the high range, there were 10, I believe? My screen's blocked. Is that the number we threw out? Or that was thrown out?
I can't see it either.
Yeah, it's blocked with my vision, with my. But I would give it a high score, whatever the highest is.
I concur. I'd give it a 9 or 10 at least.
Yeah,
10.
I would argue the slowest speaking a little lower. It's not as if he designed important buildings in Vancouver or Ottawa that are national icons or symbols. Yes, he was active in Saskatchewan and headed up the Association of Architects there, but he was more prominent in the Eastern US. I'd give him, sorry, if we can go back to the score again, I'd give him an 8 or a 9, but not a 10. My humble opinion.
Let's split it 9.
I'd support that.
Canadian compromise. How does 9 sound to
Yes.
people?
9 is
Yes.
good.
It was good.
I'm
9 it is.
I'm just looking at the application. What kind of fire stop is to be used? And the answer is asbestos.
Hmm.
Mm,
Well, that was the
hope
norm.
that's been remediated since then.
Yeah, that was the
Have to
norm.
get an application.
Thank you. Evaluation criterion 4A is architectural merit for construction type. 6484 Jubilee Road is a 2.5-story building of balloon frame construction with a large rectangular plan built atop a early concrete foundation. Balloon framing used dimensional lumber and manufactured nails, and it's particularly notable for the long continuous studs cut from tall, old-growth trees, which run from the foundation to the roof. This framing method was faster and cheaper than traditional timber framing, but was replaced by platform framing from the 1930s onwards and is growing increasingly less common. Facades of stucco with decorative wooden half timbering have always been uncommon in Halifax and are rarer still today. For these reasons, staff recommend a score between 4 and 6 points.
To me, it gives me more of a Switzerland Swiss chalet kind of an appearance to me. I just wish it kept the red. I just wish it kept the red paint, instead of brown or whatever color it is. I think the red paint would really keep the Red Gable name alive.
Yeah.
But I give it a 6.
Through the chair, though the photo may not represent it particularly well, I can confirm that in person the paint scheme is white and red still.
Okay, excellent.
Okay.
6 for sure then.
So 6 for me is fine.
I'm good with 6.
As am I.
I as well.
Okay, 6 it is. We'll agree on 6.
Thank you. Evaluation criterion 4B is architectural merit for style. 6484 Jubilee Road is an example of the Tudor revival style, which draws from the aesthetics of late medieval English architecture. Elements exhibited in the subject dwelling, which are characteristic of this style, include the steeply pitched roof consisting of multiple crossed gables, the compositional emphasis on prominent front-facing gables, the wooden stucco faux half timbering on the second story and above, and the narrow windows with many small panes of glass, especially as arranged side by side in groups of 3 or more. An earlier arts and crafts influence is also found in the exposed raptor tails visible at the eaves. 2 especially unique features to this dwelling include the 2-story rear bay window and dual flanking sunrooms. Overall, the subject dwelling, with its grand scale, highly representative Tudor revival style, and unique features, is very rare, and staff recommend a score between 7 and 10 points.
How do people feel?
I would give it a 10 easily. Just that back bay window, something else. But the second story balcony, is there any pictures to show in the balcony? I don't see anything there that depicts it.
You can see it in this
Oh, there it
historic
is.
photograph.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I would go with a 10 as well. This is one of my all-time favorite houses actually in Halifax. It's just been so lovingly restored. The beauty of this is extremely rare. I'm going to go with a 10.
I'm happy with 10.
Yeah,
So
it's
am
not
I.
10 as well.
Affirmative.
Okay.
I concur.
10 it is.
Thank you. The 5th evaluation criterion is the property's architectural integrity. 6484 Jubilee Road retains its original rectangular layout, and nearly all of the character-defining elements of the subject dwelling remain present to this day. There are only 2 notable changes. Firstly, the original building permit specifies a slate roof, and the present roof is of asphalt shingles. It's possible that the roof was never made of slate and that this feature was cut for budgetary reasons. However, this is merely speculation. The 2 flanking porches remain present today, but have since been enclosed as sunrooms. The windows enclosing them are wood frame windows, which suggests that this modification was carried out early in the building's life. Given the presumed age of the sunrooms and their construction method and design, which complements the original structure, they can be considered character defining under Standard 2 of the Standards and Guidelines, and they do not significantly detract from the heritage integrity. Overall, the subject dwelling remains largely unchanged, and as such, staff recommend a score of between 11 and 15 points.
Could you go back to the current pictures for a second? Okay, thanks. Okay. I give it a 15 on. To me, it looks like it's intact. That's incredible.
It's virtually unchanged. You know it in a minute. Anyone else? What numbers do people envision?
Oh, 15 for sure.
15 is fine with me.
15. We have
15.
agreement on 15.
That works.
Okay.
Thank you. The sixth and final evaluation criterion is the property's relationship to the surrounding area. The subject property is situated on part of the former John M. Geldert lands. It was parceled off over a decade before the rest of those lands were subdivided into house lots in 1933. The subject property was built during a period of rapid expansion for the city westward, with an influx of the middle classes. Jubilee Road attracted many upper middle class families who built large homes in a variety of styles, of which 6484 Jubilee Road is one such example. 6484 Jubilee Road is in proximity to 3 other registered heritage properties, namely A, Senator William Dennis House, 1884, B, William Harvey House, also 1884, and C, the Buckley Medical Center, 1902, as well as many contributing unregistered heritage properties throughout the throughout the Old West End.
Well, urban sprawl was so bad back then.
Yeah. Just
60
kept growing.
6484 Jubilee Road complements the density of neighboring contributing unregistered heritage buildings along Jubilee Road. This and its large scale, uncommon and exemplary Tudor revival style, and corner placement make it a valuable asset to the surrounding area, and staff recommend a score between 6 and 10 points.
It's kind of an anchor because it's unchanged. I would say 9 or 10.
I'd support a 10 as well, or at least a 9. This fits in very well with its neighbors.
Mhm.
I think a 10.
10.
Anyone else?
I'll be satisfied with that. I'm surprised this whole Jubilee Road is not a historic landscape yet. So
So we're looking at 10. Everyone in agreement?
Yes.
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 Okay, 10 we have. Thank you.
The recommendations are now before the committee for consideration. Should the subject property score 50 or more points on evaluation, staff advise the committee to proceed in making the following 2 recommendations to council. Thank you.
with the score of 70, I think it easily makes it.
I think, yeah, we certainly crossed that bar.
So I support the recommendation. I'll move it.
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it, David.
David, thank you.
For the
All in
purpose of the minutes, let's read the motion into the minutes that the Heritage
Yes.
Advisory Committee recommend the Regional Council to set a date for a heritage hearing to consider the inclusion of the subject property in the Registry of Heritage Properties for the Halifax Regional Municipality. And 2, approve the request to include 6484, 6484 and a half Jubilee Road, Halifax, and Registry of Heritage Properties for Halifax Regional Municipality shown in map 1 for the staff report dated July 20th, 2023 as the municipal heritage property under the Heritage Property Act.
Okay, thank you. Who is the seconder?
I was David Atchison.
Oh,
The other
thank you,
Dave,
Steve. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Any opposed? Motion carried. 9.1.2 is case H00564, request to include 1741-1743 Henry Street, Halifax, and the Registry of Heritage Properties for the Halifax Regional Municipality. And Elizabeth Cushing, one of our planners, will be doing that presentation. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Chair. Just going to get set up here. Can everyone see my screen?
Now I do.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Cushing. I'll be presenting 1741-1743 Henry Street Heritage Registration Request. 1741-43 Henry Street, formerly 171 Henry Street, is situated on the east side of Henry Street between Cedar and Jubilee Road. There are 6 categories for the registration evaluation criteria, each with a maximum score, as you know. I'll recommend a score for each criterion, and we'll pause after each one for HAC to discuss. The surrounding area around Jubilee Road was mostly large estates that were held by notable wealthy residents. The area remained largely undeveloped until the late 1800s, when there was an increased demand for affordable middle-class housing. The stretch of road between Cedar Street and Jubilee Road does not appear in historical maps until 1878, and Edward Maxwell submitted a building permit for the subject property in 1917, which you can see on the screen here. The subject property appears in the 1918 assessment map, which depicts a double row house with outbuildings to the rear. The first reference to 171 Henry Street appears in the 1918 to 1919 city directory, and property ownership records indicate that Maxwell retained ownership of the property at this time, although he did not live there. With a construction date of circa 1917, staff recommend a score of 9 points for age.
Well, it's similar to the last century-old house. 9 seems reasonable.
So be it.
9.
We have agreement on 9?
Yes.
Okay, 9 it is.
Perfect, thank you. In terms of architectural importance, 1741-43 Henry Street provides a unique example of the Edwardian classicism style with its concrete block construction. The style was popular from 1900 to 1930 and emphasized classical elements with balanced facades, simplified roofs, smooth surfaces, and generous fenestration. Extended roof eaves featured plain elongated blocks or cantilevered brackets like Regency and Italian villa architectural styles. Fenestration is accentuated by plain stone lintels, keystones, or voussoirs. The style provided a transitional style from 19th century to the 20th century Beaux Arts classicism, which was more cost prohibitive than the Edwardian classicism style. So elements of the style found in 1741 to 1743 Henry Street include the large paned windows with simple pattern and stone lug sills, colonnettes dividing the 2 entrances, and flat roof with extended cornice and brackets. As a unique example of the Edwardian classicism style, staff recommend a score between 16 and 20.
It's a unique house, that's for sure. How do people feel?
I'm leaning quite high toward a 19, perhaps.
I
Anyone
would
else?
agree with Patrick, Lois speaking.
So Patrick's a 19. Anyone else?
I agree, 19.
I'm good with 19. Any opposition to 19? Okay, we'll move on. 19 it is.
Great, thank you. 1741 to 1743 Henry Street was built by Edward Maxwell, a local mason and contractor who was born in Hants, Nova Scotia, to Edward Maxwell Sr. and Elizabeth Nee Forbes. Edward Sr. ran a fine tailoring shop at 132 Granville Street, which was later taken over by his son George. Edward Jr. married Ella Rebecca McKay and resided at 79 Jubilee Road, which is present-day 6047 Jubilee Road, from 1905 to 1938. Together, they had 2 children, Evan and Sydney. Edward worked as a contractor specializing in brick and masonry work. He successfully constructed masonry row houses, single-family homes, and semi-detached residences on Jubilee Road, Henry Street, and Cedar Street between 1907 to 1919. In August 1899, he submitted a building permit for the construction of the Infants Home on Tower Road, which was designed in partnership with architect S.P. Dumaresque. Maxwell again partnered with Dumaresque in 1915 to construct the present-day 1735 Henry Street, which is immediately adjacent to the subject property. Most of the structures Maxwell is known to have built or contributed to are no longer extant. The photo shown here is one of Maxwell's properties in Fairview, which was left derelict after he died. The photo is from a Halifax Mail article, which notes that the landmark building was radical in design and construction, built entirely of concrete, similar to the subject property. The article continues to speak of Maxwell's ingenuity with concrete. So a score of 1 to 3 is recommended as Maxwell was a locally significant contractor.
You're recommending 1 to 3.
Correct.
Any input for that?
This is Patrick. I would say a 2 for sure. Somebody who
Mhm.
built only their own home, we would give a 1 to, and this
Yeah.
this architect seems to have been quite active, if only on minor properties. So
Mhm.
2 for sure, maybe more.
I'm
If-
good with 2. I'm good with 2.
2 for me.
2 works. Thank you.
2 is
For
fine.
2.
Great. Thank you.
No.
The subject property is constructed of rock-faced concrete blocks, which were popular from 1900 to the 1920s. Concrete blocks became popular in construction at the turn of the century as an economical building material, and it had different patents for block designs and production. Block machines could be ordered from mail catalogs and involved pouring wet concrete into a mold where it would set, which was more efficient than kilns for bricks. The block machines were able to create a stone-like surface through the mold or special aggregates in the concrete mix. So in the early 20th century, rock face concrete blocks became popular, with later versions incorporating a custom concrete mix to create a stone-like appearance, granite facing or stucco over the concrete block. Block molds began to be able to create several blocks at a time, with each block weighing about 50 pounds. However, the blocks began to decrease in popularity after World War II. So there are several examples of concrete block throughout Peninsular Halifax. However, it's not overly common to have the entire structures built of concrete blocks. It's typically used as accent features such as veranda supports or to highlight other architectural elements. So another contiguous example that we have of concrete block construction can be found in the Hydrostone district. Of course, the subject property predates these. As such, staff recommend a score between 7 to 10 points.
I don't think 7 or 8 would be a minimum on this because it is quite rare in the city. That design. How do people feel?
I think it would be important to give it a high mark, and particularly because of its connection with the Hydrostone buildings. Everyone knows they're built out of this, but this is the first I've ever seen of this.
Mhm.
And I was fascinated with the technological process as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, a 10.
That's fine with me, yeah.
I think
Hey.
Patrick's made a good point. I'd
You're-
suggest 10 also.
You're good with 10? Okay. Anyone else?
Yep, absolutely 10.
Okay,
I'm
we'll
good with
go
10.
forward with
Well,
10.
wasn't this the technique? Wasn't this the technique that kind of built the hydrostone areas after the explosion?
Mhm.
Through your chair
no.
to the counselor, yes, that would have been a similar technique.
Okay, yep, thank you.
I think, this is Lois speaking, I think there's, Elizabeth is correct, but there is a difference between concrete and hydrostone. And I think hydrostone was a patented kind of manufacturing process and product.
But also the hydrostone had flat surfaces, whereas this imitated rock itself. So
Yes,
Hydrostone's more consistent.
yes, that's true.
Yeah.
They probably come from the same family.
Oh, yeah. Just allowed for more variance.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're 10 on that.
I concur with that.
Okay. 10 we will go forward with.
Great, thank you. For architectural merit, as we said, it is a Edwardian classicism style structure. The character-defining elements include, but are not limited to, the 2-story semi-detached Edwardian classicism style residence, 2-story rounded bay on the west elevation, rock-faced stone cladding laid in even courses, flat windows with stone lintels and lug sills, flat roof with bracketed extended cornice, open porch with simple double colonnettes, small set of stairs with railing leading to the main entrance with transom on the west elevation, narrow 1/1 window on the west elevation, and minimal setback from the street. As a rare example of the Edwardian classicism style, staff recommend a score of 7 to 10 points.
What number are people thinking?
I just think it's great work. I think I'd give it a 10 easily. It's incredible. The
And it
symmetry.
is very
everything else.
rare in the city.
Yeah, it's very unusual for Halifax. This reminds me of something English. So, so a 10 would be great for me.
And for me,
Can Elizabeth, can you clarify 1745? Where is that address? You know, we're looking at 1741 43 as the heritage registration, but it's 45. Is that the adjacent house or the adjacent? Right, I'm just trying to picture what that address is referencing.
Of course. So through the chair to the counselor, they actually are the same building. So 1745 is this one to the left, but because they are on separate PIDs, we have to discuss them separately. So after we are done this presentation, I'll be moving forward with 1745.
Okay, just threw me off there. I was wondering how the postal code was going with that one.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I had the same problem. I was reading them, but I was reading the same one again. So we're looking at a 10 for this?
Yes.
Yes.
10? Everyone's in
Affirmative.
agreement. Everyone's in agreement on 10 then. We'll move forward with 10.
Okay, thank you. For architectural integrity, 1741 to 1743 Henry Street has a high level of architectural integrity. There have been alterations to the windows and doors. However, the openings have all remained the same, and the stone lintels and lug sills have been retained. The concrete block cladding has been repaired as needed over the years, and there are no major discrepancies in the appearance. The context has changed minimally with the demolition of the automobile garages that were to the rear and the construction of a new brick row house within the inner courtyard, which was built around 2011. Overall, the alterations to the exterior are minimal, and as such, staff recommend a score of 11 to 15 points for architectural integrity.
Where do people see this falling?
This is Patrick. I'm wondering, are the front windows original? Sorry if I missed that.
Through you, Chair, I believe these were recently replaced.
Okay. They're well done on the front anyways.
It is.
I'd say it's virtually unchanged. It's kind of hard to change a stone and rock. So I think it's virtually unchanged.
I'd
So
go
we'll leave
for
it-
15 or a 14.
Looking at 14?
I'll be happy with that.
I'm happy with
Anyone
that
else?
as well.
I
I'm good.
agree.
Team.
So we have agreement on 14.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you. Residence at 1741, 1743 Henry Street has a strong historical, visual, and physical relationship with the surrounding masonry residences that were also built by Edward Maxwell. This includes the registered heritage property at 6053 Jubilee Road, which is known as Edward Maxwell House. Another registered heritage property within the complex, 6047 Jubilee Road, was not originally constructed by Maxwell, but he built the second story and added bay windows to the structure. Other residences within Association of Maxwell include 6038 to 6057 Jubilee Road, 1735, 1740 to 1742, 1751 to 1755 Henry Street, and 6060 to 6066 Cedar Street. The masonry residences are an integral landmark on Jubilee Road, Cedar Street, and Henry Street, and are representative of turn-of-the-century masonry residential architecture, which is rare in peninsular Halifax. Supports visual, physical, and historical relationship with the neighboring Maxwell-built masonry residential buildings, which are of a similar style and level of craftsmanship. Staff recommend a score of 6 to 10.
Well, it's certainly unique.
But it does fit in so well with its neighbors. This really gives me a neighborhood feel, the way the buildings are so,
Yeah.
so similar. So, and this is a huge part of it. So a 9 or a 10.
I'm go with a 10. Anyone else?
I
Good with the
agree
10.
with the 10.
10?
Enclave.
I agree.
I'm surprised to say it's not called the Brickyard.
Oh, that's in Cape Breton. Okay. So we are agreed on 10.
Great, thank you. So the following recommendation is before you today for your consideration. Thank you.
Do we have a mover for this and they can read it into the minutes?
I believe the score is a 74, I think.
I knew it was high.
That's what I see, yeah, 74.
Who would like to move this?
Oh, I can move that. I'll read it, read
Okay.
it in.
Thank you.
So I move that 1741 to 1743 Street, Halifax. Oh, sorry. Where do I start? I move, what did you say? We're at 74? Brian,
What's that?
did you say the score is at 74?
Yes.
I've heard that, yeah.
Okay, great. So I move that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommends that Regional Council 1 set a date for a heritage hearing to consider the inclusion of the subject property in the Registry of Heritage Property for the Halifax Regional Municipality. And 2, approve the request to include 1741 to 1743 Henry Street, Halifax, in the Registry of Heritage Property for the Halifax Regional Municipality, as shown on map 1 as municipal heritage property under the Heritage Property Act.
Thank you. So moved. Do we have a seconder?
This is Patrick, I'll second that.
Patrick, thank you. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None so being, motion carried. 9.1.3 is case H00565. Request to include 1745 Heritage Henry Street in Halifax in the Registry of Heritage Properties for the HRM. And again, we have Elizabeth doing the presentation.
Can we just cut to the chase and probably score 74 again?
Yeah. No need to redo it. Okay. Do we have a mover for this part of the property, 1745?
The only comment I have though is this house it looks like it has vines growing in the back wall over the brickwork, and I think it's kind of disappointing to cover up all that beautiful brick. So.
I sort of feel we should go through the motions at least and let Elizabeth make her presentation.
That's true. For the record, we should do that. Yes.
Ms. Clerk, can you confirm that this would be the process that we'd still have to take? I'm also cognizant of everyone's time.
Or we probably should.
Yeah.
Oh, sounds good.
I could double check for you, just one second.
Sure. Well, I did provide a brief summary for each of the criterions for efficiency purposes, so it might not be as lengthy as the last one.
We will need distinct scoring in the minutes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we will go through.
Perfect. All right, so as you know, 1745 Henry Street, formerly 173 Henry Street, is situated on the east side of Henry Street between Cedar Street and Jubilee Road. I'll recommend a score for each criterion and we'll pause after each one for HAC to discuss. The subject property first appears in the 1918 assessment map, which depicts a double row house with outbuildings to the rear. Edward Maxwell submitted the building permit for the subject property in 1917. The first reference to 173 Henry Street appears in the 1918-1919 City Directory. So with a construction date of circa 1917, staff recommend a score of 9 points for age.
9 points sounds excellent.
9 sounds great.
I
Robert,
agree.
Anyone opposed? 9 it is then.
Okay, thank you. It's of architectural importance. It's a unique example of the Edwardian classicism style with its concrete block construction. This was popular from 1900 to 1930 and emphasized classical elements with balanced facades, simplified roofs, smooth surfaces, and generous fenestration. So elements of the style that are found in 1745 Henry Street include the large paned windows with simple pattern and stone lug sills, the colonnettes dividing the two entrances, and flat roof with extended cornice and brackets. As a unique example of the Edwardian classicism style, staff recommend a score between 16 and 20.
I think a 19 would be appropriate.
Yes, 19 sounds fine.
Concur.
Anyone else?
Agreed.
We'll move forward with 19.
Thank you. 1745 Henry Street was built by Edward Maxwell, who worked as a local contractor specializing in brick and masonry work. He completed the masonry row houses, single-family homes, and semi-detached residences on Jubilee Road, Henry Street, and Cedar Street between 1907 and 1919. So most of the structures Maxwell is known to have built or contributed to are no longer extant. A score of 1 to 3 is recommended as Maxwell was a locally significant contractor.
I think like last time a 2 would be appropriate
Yeah.
since the details are all the same.
You got some buildings in town. 2 is fine with
I
me.
concur.
2 it is.
Thank you. The subject property is constructed of rock-faced concrete blocks, which were popular from 1900 into the 1920s. Concrete blocks became popular in construction at the turn of the century as an economical building material with different patents for block designs and production. It's not overly common to have the entire structures built of concrete blocks. It is typically used as accent features, as veranda supports, or to highlight other architectural elements. So as such, staff recommend a score between 7 to 10 points.
This is Patrick. I'm still enthusiastic about this, so I'd go for a 10 again.
That's what we gave the other portion.
Affirmative.
I think so. Yeah.
And anyone else? We're agreed on 10 then. We'll move from there.
Okay, thank you. The character defining elements of 1745 Henry Street include, but are not limited to, the 2-story, semi-detached Edwardian classicism style residence, the 2-story rounded bay on the west elevation, rock-faced stone cladding laid in even courses, flat windows with stone lintels and lug sills, flat roof with bracketed extended cornice, open porch with simple double colonnettes, small set of stairs with railing leading to the main entrance with transom on the west elevation, narrow 1/1 window on the west elevation, and minimal setback from the street. As a unique example of the Edwardian classicism style, staff recommend a score of 7 to 10 points.
Well, we gave it 10 last time, did we not?
10 before. Yeah, I think we were 10 before. Yeah. I'm fine with 10. Anyone else?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you, Lois.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go forward with 10.
1745 Henry Street has a high level of architectural integrity. There have been alterations to the windows and doors. However, the openings have all remained the same, as well as the stone lintels and lug sills. The concrete block cladding has been repaired as needed over the years with no major discrepancies in the appearance. The context has changed minimally with the demolition of the automobile garages in construction of a new brick row house that occurred around 2011. Overall, the alterations to the exterior of 1745 Henry Street is minimal, and as such, staff recommend a score of 11 to 15 points.
What did we give the last one on this category?
I gave
14.
the last one a 14.
14.
14, yeah.
And this
I
is
give
in
it.
great shape.
I give this one a 13 because of the vines.
A point for the vines gets lost. I'm
The
good with
vines are typically English.
yes.
Yes,
They'll say
many
Are
British
they-
homes.
Are they a character adding element?
I always think they're going to pull the brickwork out.
Oh, the brickwork looks great here.
Yeah.
It looks wonderful.
Yeah.
But in the English homes, I just marvel. They've got trees and vines growing up the sides of the homes, the brick homes and
Yeah.
stone homes. And I just think they get in between the mortar and pull everything apart. I would say 15 because it is an English touch, but that's just my.
But we're torn between 13, 14, and 15.
Settle in the middle of 14.
14.
14.
Okay, 14, and we go with that.
Okay, thank you. Subject property has a strong historical, visual, and physical relationship with the surrounding masonry residences that were built by Edward Maxwell. This includes the registered heritage property at 6053 Jubilee Road and 6047 Jubilee Road. The masonry residences are an integral landmark on Jubilee Road, Cedar Street, and Henry Street, and are representative of turn-of-the-century masonry architecture, which is rare in peninsular Halifax. So for its visual and historical relationship with the neighboring Maxwell-built masonry residential buildings, which are of a similar style and level of craftsmanship, staff recommend a score of 6 to 10 points.
And our last one was 9
And
or 10.
it was 10, and it's the
10.
same neighborhood, so I wasn't gonna
Yeah.
say the score.
Yeah.
9 for 10.
again.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
We stay at 10.
Thank you.
Another score of 74.
Amazing.
The following recommendations before you today for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a mover for this recommendation, please? And I'll read it into the minutes. Someone care to move it?
I can do that.
Thank you.
I move that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommends that Regional Council 1 set a date for a heritage hearing to consider the inclusion of the subject property in the Registry of Heritage Property for the Halifax Regional Municipality. And 2, approve the request to include 1745 Henry Street, Halifax, in the Registry of Heritage Property for the Halifax Regional Municipality, as shown on map 1, as municipal heritage property under the Heritage Property Act.
Thank you. And we have a seconder.
I'll second that, Lois.
Thank you, Lois.
I have a question for Aaron. When it comes to the actual public hearing date, could these two applications be held at the same time in a joint public hearing?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that would have to be discussed with the two applicants. Typically the clerk's office will speak with the applicant and give them a couple dates to choose from. But they can certainly join virtually or call in, so we can see if we can figure that out.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of this motion?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? None so being, motion carried. 9.1.4, case H00569, requests at 6038 Charles Street, Halifax, and enter in the registry of properties for the Halifax Regional Municipality. And Elizabeth, we have you again.
You do. This is the last one. Hopefully we'll be able to go play in the sun soon. All right, so I'm presenting 6038 Charles Street's Heritage Registration Request. The subject property is situated on the south side of Charles Street in the block bound by Clifton and Roby Streets. As you can see here, it is immediately adjacent to the property that we registered at 6032 to 6034 Charles Street earlier this year. There are 6 categories. I'll recommend a score for each criterion, and we'll pause after each one for HAC to discuss. Subject property was originally Lot 6 in the plan of the subdivision of the Wooddale Field. No structures are depicted in Hopkins' 1878 City Atlas, and Charles Street did not yet extend past Roby Street at that time. The block of Charles Street between Clifton and Roby Streets are identified as being vacant in McAlpine's 1897 to 98 City Directory. By Gode's 1911 fire insurance plan, 3 structures and an outbuilding had been constructed at the corner of Clifton and Charles Streets. James Ross and his mother, Caroline Ross, are identified as the first owners of the building in the city directory, and this is confirmed by the building permit, which you see on the screen here, which was issued in August 1899 for Mrs. Caroline Ross by Thomas Shand for a new dwelling. The house remained in the family for 30 years, and Ross's business partner, John Blakely, constructed the nearly identical house beside the subject property the year prior. With its construction date of circa 1899, staff recommend a score of 13 points for age.
How do people feel about 13?
Well, it fits in the category. 13 makes sense.
Yeah.
Agreed.
13 for me. Anyone
Agreed.
else?
Agreed.
Okay, we'll move forward on 13. Thank you.
Thank you. The subject property was constructed in the Halifax box style, which is characterized by a flat roof, 2-story massing, 2-story bay window on one side with the entrance on the other, with varied decoration and ornament. So design elements tend to borrow from Second Empire, Queen Anne, and Italianate styles. The overall simplicity of the Halifax box design allowed construction firms to build affordably and quickly. So although the style can be found throughout peninsular Halifax, the style of home is representative of turn of the 20th century local vernacular architecture and contributes to the special architectural style of Halifax. So as a representative example of the Halifax box style, staff recommend a score of 16 to 20.
And input from the committee?
It's important in that it is representative. There are many, many houses that are very similar to this in Halifax,
Yeah.
which I think does make it certainly worth considering for status.
I'd give it 18 at least.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think 18 as well.
I would agree.
18 for me. Okay. We have agreement on 18. Thank you.
Thank you. The residence at 6038 Charles Street was built by local contractors Thomas D. Shand and Frederick C. Campbell. It's a little challenging to see on the screen here, but this is a piece of paper that was found in the walls by the property owner, and it says this house was built by Thomas Shand and Frederick Campbell in the city of Halifax, 1899. So Shand briefly operated a cleaning and molding mill on Edward Street in Halifax. Although otherwise minimal information is available on both Shand and Campbell, their craftsmanship has contributed to the local architectural character of Halifax. As such, a score between 1 to 3 is recommended.
This is Patrick, I'd be comfortable with a 1.
Tyler, I'll agree.
Yeah, box style is fairly common. 1 is fine for me.
I agree, 1.
I agree too.
Okay, thank you. We have agreement on the number 1.
Thank you. Subject property is a 2-story building of balloon construction with a rectangular plan. It stands on a coarse rubble stone foundation mixed with large granite blocks. The foundation has been parged with concrete on the exterior. Balloon framing was the preferred method of construction from the late 19th to early 20th century. The method allowed for buildings to be constructed quickly and used dimensional lumber boards held together by nails. Balloon framing is rarely used today, but influenced contemporary platform construction. Balloon framing, while common for its time, was replaced by platform framing from the 1930s onwards and is growing increasingly less common in present-day Halifax. As such, staff recommend a score of between 1 and 3.
We've seen a lot of balloon framed houses come through. I would think of 1 or a 2.
I'd give it a 2.
Patrick,
2
I'd go
sounds,
for it 2 at
2
least.
sounds good. Anyone else?
A 2.
I support 2 as well.
Okay, thank you. We'll go with a 2.
Thank you. 6038 Charles Street provides a somewhat rare example of a Halifax box style, as it has a high level of integrity. The character-defining elements of 6038 Charles Street include, but are not limited to, the 2-story Halifax box-style house with flat roof, wood-shake cladding, rubble stone and granite block foundation, 2-story bay window with panels, piers, and bracket and corbel detailing, protruding square bay on the 2nd story with brackets and corbel detailing, and the main entrance with transom and wood piers. So as a somewhat rare example, staff recommend a score between 1 and 3.
And input from the committee? I think somewhat rare lends itself to somewhere in the middle, perhaps a 2.
Patrick, I agree with a 2.
I concur.
2 sounds
I
good to me.
agree as well.
Okay, we'll go with a 2. Thank you.
Thank you. 6038 Charles Street has a high level of architectural integrity. Some minor modifications are evident based on visual inspection, so all windows have been replaced. The rubble stone and granite block foundation, as we've seen, has been faced with concrete. An addition was constructed in the rear. However, this is not visible from the public realm and also appears in mapping around the turn of the 20th century. So the main entrance has been replaced along with the stairs and railing leading up to it. The soffit is vinyl and some of the bracket detailing on the 2nd story has been removed as a result. So the level of integrity of the remaining Halifax box style residential structures vary significantly, especially around this block of Charles Street. But 6038 Charles Street provides a strong example of the style with relatively minor modifications. So as such, staff recommend a score of 11 to 15 points.
What do people feel?
I think perhaps a 13 would be appropriate, given how much it's changed.
Yeah.
The windows in the front entrance there, but seems largely intact.
The soffit as well. Yeah, I'm happy with 13. Anyone else?
Yeah,
Agreed.
I agree. I don't think it's a 15, but certainly a 13.
Okay, 13 it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Subject property is surrounded by other residential buildings constructed in the Halifax box style with varying levels of architectural integrity. The block of Charles Street between Clifton and Roby Streets is a relatively contiguous stretch of houses of the same style and age. 6038 Charles Street has visual and historical connections to the immediately neighboring properties at 6032, 6034 Charles Street, and 6040 Charles Street, which were built around the same time. The recently registered structure at 6032, 6034 Charles Street and the subject property have particularly strong historical connections as the structures were built around the same time and the owners of each were business partners. So both structures display the same style and near identical woodwork detailing. So for its visual and historical relationship with the neighboring late 19th to early 20th century residential buildings, which are of a similar style, especially 6032, 6034 Charles Street, staff recommend a score of 6 to 10 points.
Where do people-
Eight easily, give it maybe 9.
So hearing 8 and 9. Anyone else?
I agree with the council.
9 for sure for me.
Yes.
I agree with 9 too, David.
Okay, 9 is fine.
Fine.
Okay, we will go with the 9.
Great, thank you very much.
I believe it's a score of 58, I think.
Oh, across the line. Good. I was wondering.
So the following recommendations before you today for consideration. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was a marathon. So can I have a motion from one of the members, please, regarding this this property?
I'll step up.
Thanks, Lois.
The Heritage Advisory Committee recommends that Regional Council 1 set a date for a heritage hearing to consider the inclusion of the subject property in the Registry of Heritage Property for the Halifax Regional Municipality. And 2, approve the request to include 6038 Charles Street, Halifax in the Registry of Heritage Property for the Halifax Regional Municipality as shown on map 1 as a municipal heritage property under the Heritage Property Act.
Thank you. Seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you. The question, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Before we go to the next item, could I ask
Sure.
Elizabeth, the heritage property we registered beside this earlier in the year, do you think that heritage application for the neighbor may spur on this one? I'm kind of wondering how many other street neighbors will carry on, you know, getting like the neighbors, getting the properties hitting registered.
Through your chair to the councillor, it's hard to say what the kind of influence there might have been with that, but so that's not something that we are not excited to see. And hopefully there will be. I know there's been quite a bit of interest in that neighborhood in particular with the Heritage Property Program. So we may
I'm just thinking that if the neighbors are catching on about the opportunity of registering a property and also with the Heritage Property program that we have for grant assistance, I think we better be prepared to put more money in the Heritage Program for those grants.
Yeah, with a growing draw. Exactly. The next item, Lois, you've had the floor anyway, is for Lois, and she has a motion to bring to the committee based on some correspondences you've seen regarding this issue. Some excellent correspondence with good visuals. Lois?
Thank you. And I'm looking at that correspondence and I hope others have had a chance to take a look at it as well. It was written on behalf of over 70 residents of the Woodall area. Their names are on an attached, I think it's 2 petitions. And this ties to what was just said, Brian, that there may be an upswell of interest in that particular area of the city. The correspondence was very well done. The rationale was presented, and some of the photography supporting the reason behind why it might be designated. I think perhaps it is important because of incursions in that general part of the city that we know about recently, particularly along Roby Street. Certainly the back streets that are encompassed in this Woodall area have merit architecturally and in our cultural heritage, architectural heritage for the city. And I noticed specifically, the emphasis on society and community seems in part responsible for the variety of housing types available in this area. We can see that in the property that we've just scored. Within a 5 to 10 minute walk, there are 8 non-market housing co-ops, 4 First Nation buildings, and 3 support homes operated by the St. Paul's Board. This is in addition to many small businesses, and the neighborhood feeling is further strengthened by the diversity of class and race. I thought that was very well presented as something to be valued in the city. So that said, I'll put the motion on the table and then we can perhaps discuss. That be acceptable, Mr. Chair?
That's fine, thank you.
Okay. I move that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommend that the Community Planning and Economic Development Standing Committee request a staff report reviewing the heritage value of the Woodall area for the purpose of establishing a new Woodall Heritage Conservation District, or to include the Woodall area as an extension of Creightonsfield Heritage Conservation District as identified in the Regional Center Secondary Municipal Planning Strategy.
Discussion on the motion?
I'll second that.
Any other input? I know as walking through there, they're just trying to get some incursions of demolition in that particular neighborhood, as we did down further Roby. They've had a couple of buildings torn down. No further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I think that we should get this before the Community Planning Standing Committee as soon as possible. I know they don't meet very frequently. They had very light agendas lately, but the quicker we get this on their schedule, the faster we can probably save some of those homes that could be potentially registered.
Yeah.
So I think that it's important that this gets out there, and perhaps I don't know what kind of communication will be given to that neighborhood in regards to if it goes to the SEPTED meeting for discussion. Because I think it's important that the neighborhood know. Perhaps the local councilor can get the word out somehow, or some of the I don't know, the local Facebook page in the area. I don't know, but just curious that the neighborhood should know about this opportunity. The petition and the sign is one thing. I don't know if they gave us contact information for everybody that signed that petition, but there should be a way we should communicate with them that at least the petition's been heard and we're moving it forward for consideration.
Thank you. I think that's very important to just to raise the profile of those blocks before developers get in. And the internal blocks are perhaps safe, but in this day and age, we can't tell.
Can't tell for sure. We're getting that message out. Unless we did something through the press. Any other discussion on this motion?
Well, perhaps that, could we copy in regards to this motion or minutes, whatever, that petition of, I don't know if Heritage Nova Scotia has received a copy of it or not. Perhaps they can help disseminate the information through their network of emails and distribution. So just kind of curious if they were part of the submission or contact list.
Well, I think, yes, I think someone did sort of survey the neighborhood,
Yes, they
possibly
did.
even go door to door. So that's perhaps the same sort of approach could be taken to gain the information back to people.
I don't know whether this is an appropriate approach, but the person who brought this forward, the chair or someone on the committee, could approach the person as soon as the news has been shared that it's going forward, and suggest that perhaps that person would be interested in doing a bit of publicity.
Yeah, I believe I know who you're talking about. I can do that. That's not a problem.
And it should also be known that that person, you know, these standing committees, there's an opportunity for public participation.
Yes.
So there could be an opportunity for any of those property owners to come forward and speak on regards to this matter.
Yeah, when it goes to community planning and economic development, yeah. Okay, I'm prepared to do that. That's no problem. And communicate with that individual that this is what's where we're at this point in time. And that those avenues are open to the residents of that neighborhood.
I think that would be very useful.
Okay, I will do that. We sit on the same board. So it's not a difficulty. Any other further discussion on this motion?
All for the question.
Sure. Question then, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
Any opposed? None so being, motion passed, and I will communicate that has been passed to the individual in question.
And Mr. Chair, if I could make a comment here at the very end of this item. I think everybody or most people on the committee will know the name Alan Ruffman.
Yes.
And today is the celebration of life for Alan, who died several months ago. I was going to go, decided no, I would come to the committee meeting, especially when this was on the agenda. These are the things that Alan Ruffman championed his whole life. We've all read his comments in the press.
Yes.
We've all heard him speak. I was encouraged by him, it must be 10 or 12 years ago. Why aren't you paying attention to this going on in your neighborhood? And I didn't pay any attention then, but when I had time and initiative, I decided, yes, citizens' voices were needed. And that's what Alan Ruffman was all about. And here is another example. This would be something Alan would be championing if he were here today.
Lois,
Thank you for the opportunity.
Lois, I think that's highly appropriate to say that right now, right at this moment, because the celebration is actually occurring right now between 4 and 5:30 at the St. Mary's Book Club. And personally, I think we should have a note in our minutes that we did acknowledge the celebration of life for the passing of Alan Ruffman. And if we could take a moment of silence to acknowledge him as a part of our documentation, our minutes, I would like to move that we take a moment of silence and honor Alan Ruffman.
I would second that. And we will take a moment at this time.
He would approve.
Alan certainly was an example of the power of one, if there ever was an example. Thank you, Lois, for reminding us of that. Next item is the update on membership. And we have Ella Jindy has resigned from our committee in the month of July. We have no added items and a next meeting date of September the 27th, well into fall. And I need a mover for adjournment. We will call it a day.
I so move.
Thank you, Lois. We are adjourned. Thank you, folks, on this lovely day. Go enjoy.
We will,
Mr. Chair.
under the trees.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks
everybody.
again. Thank you,
Thank you.
Dorothy.